time for the press review. Deepti Laurent joins me on the set now to take a look at what the papers have been saying today. Hi, Deepti.
Hi, Judy.
One story that is getting lots of traction is this UN report, this damning report accusing military officials in Myanmar of genocide.
That's right. The genocide generals must pay. That's what Metro, a British daily, says on its front page. You also have The Guardian, another daily, going with a picture of the Rohingya refugee recalling the horrors in Myanmar. People thrown into fires, she says, burned by launcher attacks, blood and dead bodies everywhere. A very graphic portrayal of the reality affecting many Rohingya people. While we've been looking at The Nation, which is a Thai daily, one official cited by the paper warns, I quote, that the gloves are off now and the international community's relationship with Myanmar is inevitably going to change with this report. The UN mission accusing Min Aung Hlaing, who's the Myanmar commander-in-chief in particular, of leading this genocide against the ethnic Muslim minority.
Now, there have been multiple calls for the government and for the army to face justice over this.
At least according to many of the editorial pages today. Let's start with the New York Times. They're calling for justice for the Rohingya people, even suggesting things like sanctions, travel bans, freezing of assets to really isolate the government in Myanmar from international support. The Guardian's editors, meanwhile, are blaming other things, in particular Facebook, and the role it played in whipping up hate speech against the Rohingya people. An investigation found thousands of posts online calling for the, quote, extermination of the Rohingya people. And while Facebook has now banned some of those accounts, for the Guardian's editors, it's too little, too late. I want to also show you finally this cartoon from Le Temps, which is a Swiss paper. It's a very, it's got a lot of black humor in this cartoon. The Myanmar general here is telling Aung San Suu Kyi that if they were really responsible for genocide, there wouldn't be so many Rohingya people in the camps. It is, again, black humor, of course.
Let's go now to Germany, where there have been violent clashes in the eastern part of the country after the arrest of 2 foreigners for the murder of a German man.
Those 2 foreigners were arrested for the murder of a German man on Sunday, and it sparked clashes between far-right protesters and police, and then counter-protesters on Sunday and Monday. The Chemnitz Morgenpost, that's a local paper there, they're wondering if the regional authorities still even have control over the situation. They're saying politicians have failed to come up with a response. Police appear unable to cope up with the violence, while you have Bild, which is a German tabloid, condemning what it calls a day of shame in Chemnitz. They accuse the anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany party of trying to capitalize on this deadly stabbing attack.
How's this being covered by editorialists?
A lot of anger, Jeannie, a lot of criticism both towards the government and the police for their failure to rein in this violence. The Frankfurter Allgemeine says that when riots are made possible, it's because the rule of law has abdicated. The paper takes to task as well the demonstrators, saying anyone who turns rage into lynch mob justice is him or herself a criminal. While you have Zeit, that's another paper, they're looking at the rise of the right-wing scene in Chemnitz and say for a long time it was fragmented, inactive, but in recent times, and particularly with these events, it's becoming ever more burgeoning.
You've got a bit of psychology news for us now. A new study in the U.S. has made some alarming conclusions about human cognitive behavior.
And in particular, kids. So it was thought for a long time that kids from about 4 years of age became conscious of their social reputation. And now a new study out of Atlanta shows that it even goes lower. At the age of 2, kids are already conscious of their reputation among others. They have a fear of rejection and are willing to modify their behavior to fit in or please someone. So in this experiment, the researchers showed kids how to operate a robot using 2 remote controls. With one of the remote controls, the researcher sent off a positive message saying it was fantastic, with the other one a negative comment. And what they found was that when the researcher was observing the child tended to use the remote control with the positive message, and the inverse when the researcher wasn't looking. Essentially, the conclusion being that kids will use positive messages to seek approval of someone. It's fascinating, if not somewhat worrying, about our social behavior.
Especially if you start thinking about social media and all of that. All right, just to wrap up now, Deepti, there's a new fashion trend that seems to follow the attitude we've been seeing recently, that the uglier it is, the better it is.
Oh, the more fashionable it is, that's right. Now, the Northern Hemisphere is wrapping up its summer, but there's one lingering fashion trend, according to USA Today. It's not mom jeans, it's the dad shoes. That's all the rage. Basically, dad shoes, as you see here, those these fuddy-duddy, thick-soled, chunky, kind of ugly-ish, if not comfortable sneakers worn generally by middle-aged dads with tube socks and jeans. I think we all know the type. Now, Adidas and Nike have jumped on the trend, but also luxury brands like Balenciaga and Louis Vuitton, who are coming out with their own version of the dad shoe. It is actually part of a larger 80s and 90s nostalgia that's seeing the comeback of, among other things, Jeannie, hair scrunchies and fanny packs. So if you had one back then, you might want to fish it out of your attic and dust it off.
I don't know about those dad shoes here in France. That's definitely an American trend.
It seems like an American
French
thing.
dad shoes are a little cooler, I think. Dupti, thank you for that. Dupti Killeron there with that look at the press review.